Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison and welcome back to Herb Rally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so please tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey no matter what stage you're at. We have over 500 episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes and you're bound to find something of interest. Today's episode is with Naomi Kilbreth, and Naomi is a registered herbalist practicing clinical work in central Maine. She's got a podcast of her own called the Family Herbalism Podcast. So you could just search Family Herbalism Podcast in your podcast player of choice, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., and I'm sure you'll find it. And Naomi was kind enough to share one of her episodes with all of us, and this one is called Herbs for Babes, ages 0 to 5. So in this episode, she shares what herbs and what forms of them are best suited to young children, including several common examples of problems faced, like teething, colic, nightmares, and separation anxiety. And besides Naomi's podcast, you could learn more about her and her work at LaurelTreeWellnessLLC.com. That's LaurelTreeWellnessLLC.com. And I'll be sure to include a link to that in the show notes, as always. Also, before we get into the show, I wanted to let you know that you could try your first 30 days for free of our membership area called the Herb Rally Schoolhouse. All you got to do is enter coupon code PODCAST at checkout, and you can learn more about that at herbrally.com/schoolhouse. Just click the register button, and when you register, just enter coupon code PODCAST at checkout. You'll get your first 30 days for free. And basically what the Herb Rally Schoolhouse is, if you don't already know, it's our membership area. And that's one of the ways that you can help support Herb Rally and our work here. It's only $10 a month after that first 30 days for free. And in exchange, what you receive is exclusive content, video classes. We're actually going to start coming out with monographs in there as well. But currently there's about 30-ish classes in there. And we come out with new classes each week. There's also discounts for cool herbal companies, and you also get the satisfaction of knowing you're helping support Herb Rally. So one more time, enter coupon code PODCAST at checkout, and that's herbrally.com/schoolhouse. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks again to Naomi for sharing this episode with all of us, and I hope you have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Are you pursuing a natural lifestyle for yourself and your family? Are you concerned about the standard American diet and options available for healthcare? Are you curious about herbs for health or already practice home herbalism? You've come to the right place. My mom, Naomi Kilbreth, is a Christian clinical herbalist and owner of Laurel Tree Wellness. She teaches simple ways to live in a more healthy way and to work with plants to promote and restore health. Welcome to the Family Herbalism Podcast.
Welcome back, you guys. So this morning I sent out an email to everybody that is on my email list, and I shared some really fun pictures of an activity that I did with my kids and a couple of cousins and a friend yesterday. I took 7 kids out to the woods and we finished tapping the 9 trees that we have prepared now for collecting maple sap. And for the second year in a row, we are now collecting sap and helping to guide and transform it through lots of simmering into that delicious maple syrup that we love. And so I was writing in this email about what a special opportunity it is to participate in this progress or this process with my kids, because not only are we getting to enjoy the fruit of our labor, but also this is one simple way that I can be active with my kids, go for a walk with them, have good conversations with them, and also remind them how important it is to be a part of the process of nourishing their bodies. So there's a lot of planning involved with tapping trees. We have to mark the trees when we can see their leaves more easily, so it saves some time. And then we go hiking through the woods, and we had to prepare the buckets. So instead of buying new buckets, we actually used recycled materials from around the house, and we're able to get enough together that we're able to collect some sap. And then, of course, we talk about the process with, how the maple trees produce the sap and what the purpose of it is for. And then we, have to have patience to gather it all and to boil it down or simmer it down until we have the syrup. And then, of course, why syrup is, if you're going to have some sugar, why it's a healthier source of sugar for your body. And so there's like all these different steps, and each one of them is an opportunity to share with our kids how our choices and how our actions affect our health. Now, my kids are a little bit older. They're starting at age 10. I say older because the topic of this podcast is really for young children. So today I want to talk to you about how our influence on our kids can really begin at a very, very young age, and how our response to health needs and how our choices impact them for years to come. And so you might not be taking your 0 to 5-year-old out in the woods to collect sap. Maybe you are. Maybe you have them strapped onto your back. That's awesome. You really can start at a young age, training them to participate in their environment and really be an active participant in their health. And so that's actually why I really feel like that age range from newborn to 5 is such an important opportunity. It's such a special opportunity to be able to teach our children how to take action on their health right away. So I was doing a little bit of research on brain development, and this is something that I feel like I ought to have my sister on the podcast to do an interview with her, because she has so much rich information about young kids and their brain development. But doing the research myself, I love numbers. Statistics are fun. And I learned that 85% of the brain is developed by age 5. And they are constantly making all these connections between the neurons, and so that those synapses, those gaps, become stronger, and messages can be sent, information can be stored much more efficiently. And it's just a season of incredible growth. One article that I read talked about how 1 million synapses or connections are made every minute in the first 3 years of life. There was one source that I found that showed that it was 1 million every second, but I think that might have been a typo, because every other source that I read said 1 million every minute, which is still unbelievably incredible growth. Maria Montessori, who was the founder of the Montessori method of education, especially in early life, said that if we were to compare our ability as adults to that of the child, it would require us 60 years of hard work to achieve what a child has achieved in these first 3 years of their life. And this is why we refer to children as sponges, and why countless educational programs attempt to use that efficient integration system to the child's advantage. That's why we, talk about how kids at that age, under 5 years old, can learn multiple languages at the same time, when it could take years and years of very hard work for an adult to achieve the same thing, because their brains are just in this wonderful season of growth. And some of the greatest lessons learned, regardless of formal education, actually happen unintentionally at home, because they're learning everything. They're learning how to function. They're learning how to incorporate information they gather from their environment. Research shows that babies as young as a year old demonstrate understanding of behavioral patterns and are beginning to create simple beliefs about what is true. And I think that's why all parents can tell you that kids, even under a year old, will test boundaries that they seem to know exist, even, at such a young age. And by the time they're a year old, parents are having to decide how to shape that behavior so that it is acceptable within their home. They're learning what is acceptable. They're learning what is trustworthy, what is safe, and how the adults in their world respond to a variety of situations. I picture this as sort of being like a tree in their brain. You look at all the neurons and how they're connected, and it's a complicated root system that really becomes the foundation of learning for their entire life. And it's so interesting how you can see a visual of that happening inside of our bodies, and comparing that to the world around us and nature. I mean, it brings you back to the language of similars and where the plants that are often most useful for certain health conditions actually seem to resemble the organs that are being treated. So long-term studies have shown that kids who grow up in a safe and stable and nurturing environment grow up to be healthier in all areas of life. And this is partly because a child who feels loved and safe can create space for learning. But the lessons that are taught by these loving families also create a foundation from which the kids develop their own ideas about life, including how to care for their bodies, their minds, their hearts, and their souls. It was Aristotle who famously said, "Give me a child until he is 7 and I will show you the man." Basically just pointing out the fact that kids who are under the age of 7 are very they're formable, and we can guide them and we can teach them and they learn all of these things. But by the time they're about 7 years old, they've created the foundation of their belief system that will stay with them for life and which will be much harder to adjust as they are older. Hilary Jacobs Hendel, a psychotherapist who specializes in attachment and trauma, says that being attuned to and tending to our young, even 30% of the time, actively 30% of the time, will lead to secure attachment in our child, helping them to be resilient to all of life's challenges. And when kids feel secure, they can focus their energy on learning and growing and finding their place in the community, which leads to a healthier life. As a mother of 4 and as an herbalist, I can tell you that in the early years, we have an excellent opportunity to teach our children that they are safe and loved, and also what to do if they're not safe. An empowering birth where our oxytocin levels, they're flooding in our body, and they help us they promote the environment where we can meet our child in a safe place. Breastfeeding, co-sleeping, wearing our babies in carriers are all excellent ways to teach our children that it's safe to learn and explore and challenge themselves. And allowing them to take risks within reason, enrolling them in kid-friendly self-defense classes, and being generally present in their lives are some of the greatest ways that we can give them the best start. It's in these circumstances that you will also have stronger gut instincts about what your child needs, because the more time you spend with your kids, the more you get to understand the tiny details, tiny changes in their behavior, in their comfort levels, in what's happening in their bodies, so that if something is bothering them even mildly, you'll know if their behavior changes or their sleep is interrupted. You'll recognize it faster, and the mutual trust that you will have developed will also lead to answers more quickly to understand what's going on and how to fix it. This relationship is built early, and in the process, you'll teach your child how to be self-aware, to self-advocate, and remain committed to a healthy lifestyle long after your influence in their lives wanes. I remember when my kids were really little, reading about how when you promote an environment where your children are attached to you and not push them away too early, that they will begin to explore the world knowing that they can run back to mom for safety. And you can see that demonstrated even in a playgroup setting, where you start out, you come to the playgroup, your child is attached to your leg, and you just, you sit there calmly and you talk with the moms, and the child has the opportunity to stay in that safe place in your little bubble and watch things around them until they start feeling like, oh, this might be safe to branch out a little bit, and maybe they go grab a toy and run back. So they know they're safe enough to go for a little second, and then they come back and they continue to watch their environment, and gradually they expand their bubble and they feel safer and safer to explore around them. knowing that they can glance back and see, is mom still there? Is she still watching me? Is this still safe? And at any point in time, they can return to safety. And studies have shown that kids who can do that, who can start out with that safe bubble and then choose when they're ready to leave that bubble and come back when they need to, are actually much stronger as older kids, as teenagers, as adults. They tend to feel much more self-confident in their choices and in their ability to take, safe risks and, explore the world and go to college and develop businesses and all kinds of things because of that foundation that led them to be feeling safe and like they could focus on their wellness. And you're probably wondering, what does this all have to do with herbalism and babies? And the thing is that in an environment where kids feel safe and nurtured, they're able to focus their inner energy. Their body is able to chemically provide an environment where they're able to be healthier. So many studies have shown that people who do not feel safe are going to be flooded with stress hormones that do not allow their bodies to heal. So it creates an environment where they're more likely to get sick. They're more likely to have anxiety. They're more likely to have depression. They're more likely to even develop cancers later on in life because their bodies are not able to focus on being healthy. And so with young kids, we don't want to have to think about treating them with herbs or treating them with medicine or treating them with a focused diet. We want to create an environment in which their bodies can just remain in homeostasis and be healthy right from the beginning. A healthy sleep environment, time outside, breast milk, nutrient-rich foods, clean water, age-appropriate mental and physical challenges, and lots of snuggles are by far what kids need most in the first few years of life to be healthy. Very rarely do kids under 5 need anything other than maybe a little nudge in the right direction from herbal medicine. But there are lots of plants that are food grade and are safe to give to small children as needed, and there are gentle ways to work with them. At some point in time, most babies or small children do experience a diaper rash, an upset belly. They definitely experience teething, perhaps a cold, a bad dream. Those happen to everybody. Separation anxiety does happen to a degree, even when the children feel safe to explore. Any of these can pass on their own, but working with gentle herbs can make that passing easier and help to prevent them from returning. Aside from teething, of course, which is unavoidable. More severe situations like colic, eczema, thrush, nightmares, bedwetting, long after toilet training, tantrums, flus, and other situations can happen in early childhood, and having herbal options for those situations can be reassuring to parents who are concerned about giving their kids medications early in life, or, especially in situations where treatment protocols are necessary for more than just 1 or 2 doses, and they really want to make sure that they're giving them healthy things that are safe. I originally became an herbalist because I saw how effective herbs could be, and it empowered me to take care of my kids in a safe way. So if you've listened to the first couple of podcasts, I talk quite a bit about my story and how I became an herbalist, and it really had to do with being a better parent. I felt like I was stronger as a parent if I could learn how to trust my kids and how to provide them with things that were safe, treatment protocols that were going to be safer for them. And I grew as a parent, and my kids learned that our choices and actions have a strong impact on their health as well. So they know now that when they have an upset belly, they can drink peppermint tea or ginger tea, that when they can't sleep, they can apply lavender oil to their chest, that if they're worried, lemon balm tincture will quickly help their hearts to calm down, to help them feel more safe. And they know that when they get a boo-boo, they can apply some of our cream, we call it, which is just a comfrey and plantain salve that's very soothing to their skin. And they've learned this through early impressions and repetitive actions. These are all routine things that come automatically now because we started when they were very young. So if your kids are young, they are watching, and you can help them to put their best foot forward by teaching them at this age how to care for themselves. Not that you can't at a later age. It is certainly possible and definitely encouraged to begin as soon as you are aware that these are opportunities for you and that natural medicine is effective and safe. But it is certainly ideal to begin at a young age when they're really absorbing all of this information.
Hey everyone, it's Mason. Just a quick interruption from the show to let you know about our 13 herbal freebies. If you go to herbrally.com, on the navigation bar at the top of the page, you'll see a button that says Freebies. Just click there and you'll sign up for our email newsletter. And in exchange, we're offering 13 herbal freebies. That's ebooks, webinars, videos, downloadable audio, and discounts to cool herbal companies. So if you'd like to check out these freebies as well as sign up for our email newsletter, we update you about current events, new monographs, new videos, etc. Just go to herbrally.com and click on the button at the top of the page that simply says Freebies. Okay, that's it from me. Now back to the show.
So what are some safe ways to work with plants for babies and toddlers? Number one, I want to emphasize that if your child is under 6 months old, ideally they're breastfeeding, but even if they're not, So if you're breastfeeding, you can eat the herbs or foods that your baby needs, and they will be passed, the nutrients that they need will be passed through your breast milk to your babies. But if you are not breastfeeding, you can still use gentle remedies carefully for them. It is best to use them to work with natural remedies under the supervision of an herbalist or someone who's had a lot of experience with that so that you get proper dosage. But some basic guidelines are, if they're under 6 months old, they probably shouldn't be taking anything internally, and certainly not undiluted essential oils. You really want to just focus on as gentle of remedies as possible. And so I'll talk about a couple of exceptions for things that are safe to take internally, even at a very, very young age. But that's pretty rare. You really probably don't need to work with things internally. So if you're breastfeeding, which is ideal, then you're going to be able to drink the tea yourself or take the tincture and know that whatever the baby needs is going to be coming through your breast milk. But there are other ways to work with, natural remedies besides taking herbs internally. It can be, getting sunlight on their skin can help support their immune system. So if they're fighting a cold, taking a walk, making sure they're getting fresh air and, just sitting on the porch and getting some sun on their skin, or focusing on their sleep patterns. So if they're feeling ill, then making sure that you're spending enough time at home that they can work on regulating their sleep patterns more effectively. Or if they have a rash, making sure that they are out of their diapers as much as possible and getting some fresh air on their bum. These are all supernatural, gentle ways of being able to support their bodies in healing without even putting anything in their bodies or on their skin. But there are some ways to work safely with herbal remedies. Salves and infused oils are a great way. Now, by infused oils, I don't mean essential oils. I mean like olive oil or coconut oil or jojoba oil or almond oil, things like that are more like cooking oils, and infusing them with whole herbs that are safe for baby's skin, and then applying that topically. So infused oils are great because, say you have a baby with an upset belly, if you infuse some olive oil with fennel, then you can give them a nice gentle massage with the oil, and it's very soothing to their skin. It gives you a great opportunity to really connect with them, and then they're also getting a very gentle form of the herbs into their bloodstream to really help their belly. And so that's a really gentle way of working with plants. Salves, which are infused oils that are mixed with beeswax, are another great way to work with their with their skin. I've used that instead of working with diaper rash creams and found that salves that are specifically infused with herbs that are good for the skin are a really great way to help heal any rashes or diaper rash in particular. If you want to work with essential oils, you can do that using aromatherapy, which means putting it into the air. So using a diffuser is fine. You could put it, let's say the baby is having a hard time sleeping, you could put a drop of lavender oil onto the mattress itself or onto the sheet, and so that it's not directly on their skin, but they're definitely being exposed to the vapors. Flower essences are safe to work with for babies, and because they're so diluted, you can get flower essences that have been prepared with glycerin instead of with an alcohol base. And so normally, even with the alcohol, it's such a incredibly small amount that it would generally be safe to work with for kids, but a glycerin base would be even safer for babies. And so flower essences with a glycerin base are a great option. And of course, baths are a fun way. You can take a bath with your baby, or you can do a bath in the sink, and you could put, maybe some rose petals in there for soothing their skin and calming their nerves if they're upset, or chamomile. All the flowers are really nice to incorporate into a bath. Oats are an excellent option, very nourishing to the skin and to the nerves. And so baths are a great way to work with them so that they're just a diluted property that's being absorbed into their bodies. And that works really well when they can't eat those plants as well. Very few essential oils are safe to work with before 6 months old. And usually if I'm going to apply one topically like lavender, it would be to the feet rather than to other areas of the body, because the feet do tend to be a little bit tougher. It's further away from their face, so it would be less irritating. One of the reasons you want to be really careful is because especially if you put them on their face or near their hands, then they can unintentionally end up getting it into their eyes or into their, ears or mouth or someplace where it's very sensitive, just by rubbing it around with their hands. So you want to try to avoid the upper part of the body when you're working with essential oils for very young babies. If it is appropriate to give a certain tea, at that age, you're talking about a lick of tea, really. So just enough. You could literally use a dropper and just put a little bit on their tongue. So this would be appropriate with something like fennel, which can help with gas, or maybe some parsley that would help to settle their stomachs if they're experiencing colic. Chamomile maybe if they're really struggling with teething or with appropriate sleep, then, a little bit of a lick might be appropriate for a baby that's under 6 months old. After 6 months old, you can give a little bit more leeway, but still you're talking in, very small doses. So I compare this, it sounds silly, but I compare this to having a pet. You can actually have pets self-medicate by putting the ground herbs into their food, and then, they're eating it themselves rather than trying to force feed it to them or using tinctures and you're putting that right in their mouth. So with babies that are starting to eat, you can actually prepare some really great herbal treats into their food. So little, cookies, little peanut butter balls for older babies or toddlers, things that are small that they can eat themselves that are really fun, incorporating it into their vegetables, into their soups. You can work with herbs in that way. There's tons and tons of recipes out there for toddlers. To convince small kids to take their herbs, working with it in food form is actually a lot of fun. So another way that you can work with herbs after 6 months old is with milk decoctions. So a milk decoction is actually very common in Ayurvedic medicine. And what it is you mix a combination of milk and water into a small saucepan, and then you add the herbal remedy, the plant material, and you bring it to a simmer where the water begins to evaporate, and you evaporate it down until you are left with just the milk, which doesn't evaporate as well. And by that time, the plant material, the medicine from it has absorbed into the milk, you strain out the plant material and then you feed them, or, you drink the milk. And so we'll talk about dosages, but this is a really great way to work with plants, because kids are, young babies and children are familiar with drinking milk. And so it's just a flavored milk to them. Glycerin-based tinctures, again, this is where the plant material is absorbed into the glycerin rather than in an alcohol form. And sips of tea. You can gradually add in diluted essential oils after age 2, but really before 2, we don't work with too many different essential oils. So a general guideline for tea is that you are giving them a lick as a baby and then a sip per year of age. So if you make yourself a cup of chamomile tea, your 1-year-old could take a sip off of your mug, and that would be considered a dose. And a dose, normal dosages are 3 to 4 a day. So you might prepare 1 cup of tea. If they actually need this to be on a regular basis, then they could have, 3 or 4 sips that day out of that cup of tea. Or if you're doing tinctures, normally I work with very, very small doses anyways. And so a nutritive dose for an adult is about 10 drops. So for a young child, a drop under their tongue is plenty. And then you have things like syrups. So syrups, I put this in more of the food group, the food category, but if you're working with, say, elderberry syrup, which is quite popular among families for supporting the immune system, this would be appropriate for any child who's able to have honey. So, raw honey under age 1 is debatable. There is some evidence to suggest that might be unsafe because of the bacteria content. So if your child is over age 1, elderberry syrup is, or syrups in general are a fun way to be able to provide your child with nutritive herbs. And so these are some examples. We've got the salves, we've got the teas, the tinctures, milk decoctions, syrups, essential oils. Those are some common ways to work with herbs. So what are some herbs that are good to work with? So again, for the most part, I prefer working with very simple, very basic food grade herbs for children. And food grade means that basically this is a food source. It's no different than working with spinach or parsley or, other herbs garlic, things you would put into your food. And so you can eat large quantities of them. It's difficult to overdose on them. And sometimes when we talk about dosages, we don't mean that you can't take more, but rather this is the amount that you would need to get the relief from symptoms that you're looking for. But when we're talking about food grade, even if you only need a small amount, it's generally safer to work with larger quantities, especially if you're eating them in food form. So like oats, for example, for a cup of tea for a small child is a sip per year of age, but that doesn't mean that they can't eat a bowl of oatmeal. So there is some balance there. So oats, again, like I'm looking at very nutritive plants because when you're providing nutrients to babies, their bodies are going to heal. Children heal more quickly than adults do. And so when you provide their bodies with the nutrients that they need, their bodies are generally able to heal themselves. And if they're having food allergies, you can remove triggers. You can help their bodies to heal faster. But generally speaking, we're not working with plants that are going to be very strong. We're working with plants that are going to be very gentle and very nutritive. So oats are a very good example of this because oats are loaded with minerals and vitamins that, it's basically a superfood for especially for kids. That can help with healthier digestion. It can help them to sleep better. It can help their skin to be more comfortable. So really any kind of condition that kids are going to be likely facing, oats are a great option to work with. And that's, the milky oat tops, the seed part that we eat in ground, in oats. It could be oat flour. It could be the straw, the actual oat straw can be worked with as medicine. The entire plant is actually very nutritive. Lavender is, of course, very safe for kids. Lavender does not have to be an essential oil form. It could be dried, and you can get the whole lavender flower dried, and then you can use that in many different ways. Baths are a great option. Working with it in infused oils topically to the skin is a great option. Calendula is another really great flower. So calendula is often grown in flower gardens. Some people don't realize that it's actually very medicinal. So if you've ever grown calendula and you've pulled off the flower blossoms, you'll have understood that the flowers are very, very sticky. There's a sap that basically comes out of the bottom of these flowers, and that's where the medicine is. That's where all the nutrition is for the plant and also for the people. And so calendula is very great for kids. It's very soothing to the digestive system as well as to the skin. And so it's commonly put into diaper rash remedies that are made with plants. And it's one that is definitely safe for very small children and all the way up through all the ages. Chamomile is another great one. It's very gentle. Again, another flower. Flowers are generally safe. So chamomile is wonderful for kids who have any kind of pain. It can be very soothing to the nerves. For nightmares, it's also soothing to the bladder. And so if there's any bladder irritation, any issues with bedwetting, or UTIs or things like that, the chamomile can be very soothing for that as well. Fennel, again, I've mentioned that a couple of times. Fennel is great for small children. Lemon balm is actually one of my favorites to work with for kids because lemon balm has so many wonderful properties to it. It's antiviral, so it's great for supporting the immune system. It is very calming, so kids who have anxiety, separation anxiety, nightmares, small children who maybe have to go to daycare, it's a really great option. Lemon balm it tastes like mint, lemony mint, so it has a really nice flavor that kids also like too. And so let's talk about some specific situations. I have 6 things on my list that are very common, and we'll talk about some specific herbs that are appropriate for most small children. And there can be exceptions, but we'll talk about that a little bit. Ear infections. Okay, so if your child is breastfeeding, they probably won't have as many ear infections as if they are taking formula, but they do happen. They're common after colds. For kids to experience, and there are a number of natural remedies that work really well for ear infections, but my absolute favorite is garlic infused olive oil. And if you can get mullein, which does grow wild, mullein is a wonderful plant to add into this garlic oil. And so with this, it's really simple to prepare. You chop up a couple cloves of garlic, you let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then you simmer it in probably a couple tablespoons of olive oil. And so you do not let it saute. You don't want it to turn brown, but just warm it up in the pan for another 15 minutes or so. And then you would let it cool down, strain out the garlic that's left, and use a dropper or a spoon to place some in the ear of the child, in the ear canal. And of course, so you want to make sure it's nice and cool. You can test it on your inner wrist. And then you would just coat the inside of the ear canal. If you can't get the child to hold still, that's fine. You've still gotten it in there. If they can hold still, giving them some tech time, a tablet, or watching TV or something like that to help them hold still is wonderful if they can lie down, but if not, that's okay. And the garlic and the olive oil both help to kill pain, and they're also very antibacterial. The mullein is also very antibacterial and seems to have a really great affinity for the ears. And I have used this personally a number of times, and rarely do I have to do that more than twice. So I would do it a couple times a day, but rarely have I had to do that for more than 24 hours. It's very effective at eliminating ear infections, especially if you do it very quickly. Diaper rashes are also very common. So again, with diaper rashes, sometimes it's a sensitivity to the type of diapers. Sometimes it has to do with, dietary sensitivities. So there's different reasons why it might happen. But regardless, there are things that you can do to help to heal up a diaper rash that has occurred. So taking a nice bath in milky oats is a great way to soothe the skin and help, angry skin to calm down. Plantain, which not the banana looking fruit, but the plantain leaves that grow as weeds in most people's yards, are actually very healing. They have a chemical called allantoin, which is also in comfrey, which does the same thing. They're both very, very healing to skin. They literally knit skin back together again. So if the skin is raw, it's anti-inflammatory, so it calms down the skin, and then it heals any raw areas. So plantain and calendula are also really great, or comfrey are really great for that. And then of course, calendula, which I mentioned is very soothing to the skin, is a great option. So you could do the milky oats bath. If you have an oil that is infused with plantain, comfrey, or calendula, or all three, those are great options. And you can also find there's a lot of salves available. I mean, Etsy is a great source. I have some salves available that I sell from Wildly 207 that have really great herbal properties in there that would be awesome for diaper rashes also. So what happens if your child has a cold? So with colds, oftentimes with small children, the biggest problem is congestion. They get all stuffed up. They don't necessarily know how to blow their nose effectively. It might impact their breathing, which can then impact their sleep. So as far as colds are concerned, doing all the normal things with encouraging water, getting out in the sun, teaching them how to blow their nose. These are, effective things that you can do that for young children that don't involve medicine or herbs. But you can also work with foods that are going to support their immune system. So getting lots of garlic and onions in there and leafy greens as much as possible is good. Elderberry, if they can do the honey, then elderberry syrup is great. But if they can't, you can make elderberry tea instead. And there's some other great recipes out there for working with elderberries. Hibiscus and rose hips are both very rich in vitamin C, and you can make a really nice hibiscus and rose hip popsicle, recipe for your small children. And so if they have fevers, or if getting, tea into them is out of the question, or syrup is not an option, you can use hibiscus and rose hips to make a really nice popsicle medicine. Everybody loves that. Echinacea is safe for small children. Peppermint is also safe for small children. So peppermint tea is fine. You could also use peppermint essential oil and put that into a diffuser. You can also infuse peppermint into an oil or into a salve and then apply that to their feet or to their chest as a sort of like a Vicks vapor rub type thing. And mullein. So mullein I mentioned as being really great for ear infections, but one of mullein's powers has to do with decongesting lungs. So if you can do a mullein infused oil and apply that to their back and to their chest, that will help to break up congestion and help them to breathe more easily if they have a cold or other virus. So let's talk about bad dreams. So bad dreams do happen on occasion, and sometimes kids have a hard time going back to sleep again if they're not, if they wake up and they've had a bad dream. Bringing them into bed with you or having them sleep with a sibling can be very soothing. But if bad dreams become a pattern where they're afraid to go to sleep at night, or they have a hard time sleeping in their own beds because of it, or they're repetitively waking up with the same dreams, there can be things going on during the day that can lead to that. So I would look for the cause of the bad dreams and explore that a bit. But there are some things you can work with herbally to help small children to sleep better. Juniper berry is one of my favorites. Juniper, it grows wild. Oftentimes it's planted underneath power lines because it discourages the growth of other plants. And so it can kind of make it travel a little bit easier if you're trying to create a walkway. But juniper berry is very cleansing, and it is also cleansing to the nervous system. And so it promotes better quality sleep with fewer bad dreams. But it's very strong. So I would not work with this internally or topically on the child. But if you work with it in essential oil form, you can put a drop or two right on the mattress, and the essential oils, as it evaporates, will still, the child will still be exposed to it and inhale it, and that can be very soothing. When they get to be closer to 4, 5, 6 years old, you might dilute it and apply it to the bottoms of their feet. But for children smaller than that, just putting a few drops on their mattress is going to be just as effective. Other herbs that can help with bad dreams include lavender, so you can use that. doTERRA has a really nice roller bottle that is safe to apply to baby's skin, and so you could put that on their feet or on their back, maybe the back of the neck, to help them to sleep better. Lemon balm and chamomile both are great nervines for calming down the nervous system and can help promote deeper and better quality sleep. So a sip of tea before bed or a drop of tincture before bed can help them to get to sleep and sleep better. And then we have teething on the list, and teething, of course, is something that all small children go through. And I think one of the most popular remedies is clove. So you can get clove in essential oil. I don't work with it in essential oil form for small children because it's just very, very strong. Instead, I really like glycerin. So clove that's been infused into glycerin, and then you can just rub it right onto their gums or right onto their jaw. And it is very numbing. And so it's, it lasts a couple of hours, I would say, when you apply it topically like that. Lavender can be applied the same way. If you're talking a very young child, you could use diluted lavender essential oil and apply it to the jaw instead of putting it into their mouth. There's also some great homeopathic remedies that have chamomile and lavender and other soothing flower herbs that you can apply safely internally, like just rubbing it right onto their gums to help them not have teething pain. And then if you wanted to infuse maybe a wet washcloth with some chamomile or lavender, you could make the tea and then infuse that into, dip a washcloth into it, freeze the washcloth, and then they can chew on that, and they'll just be getting a very small amount of the herb, but that would also be a great way to get that into their bodies in a comfortable way. Oh, I missed it. I actually have another one. So there's a bonus, a bonus thing. And so colic is the next one. We talked a little bit about that. Now, babies can have upset bellies if they have gas. If they are throwing up, spitting up quite a bit after they've eaten, they're probably not digesting their food very well. But if they're repeatedly having episodes of crying for hours on end, chances are there is something going on in their digestive system where there is a food that is irritating them. And so if you're breastfeeding, it may be something that you are eating, or it could be the formula type. And I would strongly suggest doing either an elimination diet for yourself and pulling out things that cause gas, things like garlic and onions or cabbage or broccoli and cauliflower and things like that are more likely to cause gas. You might want to pull those out. Or dairy can be a big trigger for some babies, and just see what happens over the next few days, or change their formula type. There's a lot of great anti-allergy type formulas that can settle better on baby stomachs. So you want to go for go for food that's going to be more gentle if they're always having problems digesting their food. But at the same time, if you're dealing with symptoms and you want to address that, Dill, fennel, and ginger are all safe to work with in small amounts. So again, a sip of tea, or you can infuse it in some oil and apply that directly to their lower back or to their stomach. And you can put it in essential oil form into a diffuser and have them inhaling it. And that would be another way to get it into their bodies safely. But you're just talking about a very small amount, but preferably getting out those allergens or sensitivity, food sensitivities, dealing with that would be most appropriate. So the bonus one is sunburn. So sunburns are interesting because small children, now what I have found in personal experience is that kids are pretty smart. They tend to know when they need to get out of the sun. And so when I set my kids free outside in the summer, they will frequently go back and forth between being outside, being inside, or out under the trees and then out into the field. And so they're not really in the sun long enough to be able to get a sunburn. And usually in this case too, they're outside earlier in the morning and they're building up resilience to the sun. And so they don't burn that often. But if you go to the beach or you go to a different location where they're not in a familiar place and they're not necessarily as responsive to their body's signals, sunburns do happen. And so in this case, there's lots of different treatments, different ointments and things that can be applied. But when you're talking about young skin, you want to be careful about what is going on to their bodies. And so things like aloe, lavender, peppermint, calendula, and plantain, again, the same things that you would apply to a diaper rash will also be soothing here. So with peppermint, what you could do is put like a drop or two into a small spray bottle of essential oil and then top it off with water and just spritz it onto the skin. And that can actually relieve a lot of the discomfort from a sunburn. But aloe, you could take that directly from the plant, or you could get aloe juice or an aloe ointment and apply that topically. Lavender, you could apply the same way with a spritzer, or you could apply that with some coconut oil, which would be very soothing to the skin. Plantain, in a salve form. So if you have like a really good size sunburn, if your child is really burnt, then you may want to apply the herb in salve form, because the salve is not going to evaporate very quickly. It's going to sit on their skin and really provide some protection from their clothing that's put on top, or the protection from being out in the sun again. And so a salve that has oil infused in plantain or calendula would be super, super soothing. So these are some examples that might be helpful to you if you have small children and you're looking for what kind of things are safe, what can I use for medicine. But there may be other situations that come up. Maybe your child has a unique situation. Maybe you have concerns about a chronic health condition, maybe it runs in the family, or maybe there's an acute situation where they just got hurt and you would like some assistance with that. So I work directly with young kids one-on-one for issues that are more, maybe mild but long-term situations. And then I also do have a tech support service, which is great for parents who just want to quickly, get some reassurance or get some ideas on how they can handle a situation that is more of a short-term, immediate need. And so both of those things you can learn about on my website at www.laureltreewellnessllc.com. Or you can contact me directly at laureltreewellness@gmail.com, and I would be happy to talk with you about some options to help you take care of your children. But, again, I just want to leave you with this encouragement. You have a wonderful opportunity. If your children are between the ages of 0 and 5, you have a wonderful opportunity to teach your kids to take care of themselves. When you take them outside and you show them a dandelion, when you show them a clover or a plantain leaf and how they can use that as food or to help soothe their body if they got a bug bite or something, then you're giving them a powerful lesson. And so working with natural remedies at this point in time, it might be helpful, for practical purposes, but a huge part of it is teaching them how to set that foundation and create a path of healing for them when they may actually need it more intensely at a later age. So, read up on it. One great book that I definitely encourage you to look into is Herbal Healing for Children by Demetria Clark. There's, it's very easy to read through or to look up specific conditions that might be applicable at this age, and it tells you what herbs are safe or not safe for children. So it's a great reference book. But if you need any assistance, certainly reach out and I'd be very happy to work with you. So next week, I am very excited to say I'm finally going to be starting the series on tissue states. So it's going to be broken down into a three podcast series on hot and cold, wet and dry, intense and relaxed. And it's going to be really interesting, information packed. So I hope you will stay tuned and check that out when it comes. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great week, everyone. The Family Herbalism Podcast is created for educational purposes only. You are responsible for any and all medical and health decisions you choose to make. If you experience a medical emergency, please contact appropriate medical providers. To receive herbalist support, please visit www.laureltreewellnessllc.com. If you enjoy this podcast and find it helpful, please share it with your friends and family. Thank you for listening.